Hello again. We're going to talk now about programming, how to program looks in Lumen8. So the first thing I'd like to point out is there's two different screens. There's the programming mode screen where basically you show and you can view your fixture layout and where your fixtures are. And then you have your palettes where you can alter those fixtures. So for instance, I pick a color here. I can pick my gobo here, so on and so forth. So that's the programming mode, and this is the save button where you would save your cues. The playback screen or playback mode is where you would assign your cues. So you'll notice that this looks a little bit different than most lighting consoles. And what we do and what we did is we created a visual cue list. So each of these assignable buttons represents a cue, and we'll create some just now, and you can have multiple pages. So each of the faders or playbacks can have multiple pages of cues in a list, and so it's just like a cue list, except the representation of each cue is a button instead of based out like an Excel spreadsheet. These faders up here are assignables, so they're stackable assignables. Like, for instance, if you wanted to assign a strobe effect and then layer it on top of a look, or a spotlight, or things like that, these 8 assignable faders, again, they're on the Surface lighting console, so you can assign those, and they have a higher priority. So all the looks here in the cue list are normal priority, and then these are higher, so these will always take over if it's affecting the same look. And then you have the 32 assignables up there. So again, the 32 assignables on the Surface, you can assign these to maybe color changes or gobo changes, or even complete looks or fog machine, or whatever you need to do. I also want to point out something here. You'll notice this little green icon here. And let me add a new page. And what that little green icon indicates, it's what we call fader catch-up. So what happens is when I move between pages, you'll notice that those change. And the submaster fader will not be affected until it gets to that point, and then it allows you to move. So when changing between pages, it gives you the solution of not having like looks bump up to the previous page, and it keeps the pages in sync. I think that is it. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about creating a static look. So first thing I'm going to do is hit clear all. Again, all these buttons are have similar buttons on our Surface console, so you can kind of get used to it. You'll see the layout is very similar. And you can hit clear all on the console, and then I can go to my groups tab here, and I'm going to go ahead and select my first group. I'm going to initialize them. That will turn them on. We'll pick a color, and we'll pick a gobo, and we can just now, and for positions we can hit center, and now we're centered down. And then using the pan and tilt wheel, we can now move the fixtures where we want. And we'll just make it a simple look. We're saving all the fixtures pointed on the back wall there. Let me just open the visualizer here. And so you can kind of view what we're doing here. So we're going to go ahead and select them all. Again, this can be done on the pan and tilt wheel on the Surface console. And actually on the station, you can also use pan and tilt by putting your presets to position, and then the last 2 encoders on the 8 submasters become the pan and tilt. So we're going to go ahead and save that look, just a static look. By default, it will select a 1.25 crossfade in and out time. You can change those. By default, it's going to save all the channels, and you can choose to save just specific channels, but for this, we're going to save all of them. And then it's going to create a sequence preview. A sequence preview basically gives you an idea of what is programmed into that look, and you'll see that now when we assign the button. So if I leave the name empty, then it will automatically name it. If not, I can go ahead and again use the 32 top keys on my Surface to name the sequence. So again, I don't need an additional keyboard. So I can hit the save button once again on the Surface console or in the software. And now you'll see I have now in assign mode. So now I can assign it to any place I want, and I can just touch it on the screen, or I can hit the bump button on the button group, the visual cue list that I want to assign to. But for this illustration, I'll go ahead and assign it to that first one. So basically, I've now created one cue. Let's create another. I'm gonna init. We're going to select a color. We'll select a different gobo, and we'll move it down here. We're gonna save it. Save. So what you'll notice is when I hit my go button, now I can go between the two looks. Quite simple. And you can insert cues wherever you want. Again, when you're assigning with the surface, when you hit the bump button, it will get the next available position and place the next cue in that position. And you can also have multiple pages, and I'll actually go through that in just a second. To release any cue on an active visual cue list, on the encoder on the station and the surface, you just tap the encoder, and that will release the cue and fade it out. So let's go ahead and create a moving look. I'm going to use these same fixtures, and we're going to pick a different color. We'll pick a different gobo, and then I can go to joystick. So if I do this, basically now I've created a circle movement, and my offset is 1. You'll see here on your 8 submasters above the encoders, this controls the offset. This encoder encodes the shape and the size. The size actually can be adjusted with the select wheel on the surface, and then the pan and tilt wheel now, while the shape is active, becomes the center of movement. So you can change the center of movement for that shape, and then the select wheel changes the size. So I can change my size here. So once I have that moving look there, I can again do the same process, hit the save button, and I don't have to name it if I want to. I can just hit the save button again, and then now I can assign it to the next available position. So we'll go through that again. You'll see that, and we can raise that up a little bit. So you see how quick and easy you can create these looks, either moving looks or static looks. They're very easy to do. Let's actually create one more look. I just want to show you an example of a color stack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit those fixtures. I'm going to turn them blue. I'm going to save changes. But I'm going to select color and gobo only, and actually I just want to save the color wheel. So this is just going to be a blue color wheel, and I'm going to assign it to one of my assignables up here. So what that allows me to do is, say for instance I have this look active, I can now stack my blue look on top, and it will change just the color wheel and leave the other looks in place. In the same way, I can do it to an assignable. So let's say we're going to go ahead and clear this. Hitting my edit button, again the edit button on the hard console on the surface, you hit the select button and the edit button will highlight. And so if I go into edit mode on the playback screen, then when I click the button, then I have these options on my touch screen. I can move the button, I can copy it, I can rename it or delete it. I can edit it, I can adjust the fade it out and in times. I can insert a mark cue or insert a fade cue. I can also turn the bump mode on for that button, so if I want the button to change. And then I can show preset data, which again we'll get into later. So for this particular button, I'm actually going to select copy, and then I can press the bump button on one of my assignables, and now that assignable button controls that color wheel. And in fact, let's do a different one. I'm going to copy this button here. So you'll see as soon as I raise that, I have now that assignable fader now becomes that look. And again, these have higher priority than these looks, so you can easily create strobe chases and other things on those faders, and when they're active, you'll see that. The one other thing you'll notice here, I just want to quickly point this out. When I execute this button, you'll notice a little bit of a delay. Let's go ahead and do that again. You'll notice a delay when I press it. That is the fade in time. So for us to change that, we'll just edit that button. We're going to adjust fade in and out time, and I'll unselect it. And then so now I have quick access to that color just by stacking it. The other thing I can do here is I'm going to turn bump on, and then now when I hit the and release the button, I can change my color that way. Let's see, assignable top button. I think we've covered everything here. Again, this is a quick start video just to go over the quick features of the Lumen8 and how to get you quickly started. Thanks for checking out this video. Many more to come.